So I want to talk about weight bias, and there's two areas here. One is the bias that exists in our society. So we know from childhood up till now, we live in a culture that has misunderstood obesity and placed values on it. Even when we're young kids, if we survey people at the age of 5, negative attitudes are being developed about their peers that live with more weight. And this is really learned. We live in a society in which these messages are everywhere, that obesity is an individual's fault. It has to do with laziness or eating too much. You just Google obesity and you'll find images that are very toxic and harmful. And that misunderstanding is because we didn't, as a society, as a medical community, recognize that obesity is seated in the deep brain, an unconscious part of the brain, interacting with the environment. And both of these factors are mostly out of the realm of control, of personal control and personal responsibility. So we can separate a little bit about, say, becoming accountable. So if we want to eat broccoli for dinner every night, that we could become accountable to that. But that we also need to recognize that the brain is really tightly regulating weight. And that while we can be accountable to eating broccoli, we can't take responsibility. We have no responsibility or power over what happens on that scale. And we'll, of course, talk about how the brain regulates weight more. So there's a misunderstanding that body weight is under self-conscious control. And so this also gets into something about diet culture. Diet culture is everywhere, and it also has several toxic myths. One is that we control our body size through food. The second is that body weight is under personal control and one's individual responsibility. And thirdly, that our physical body size is more important than mental well-being or even physical health. And so many of you have experienced bias. All of us have been living in diet culture. And we experience bias through these negative words that are said by family members and friends. Sadly, most patients have experienced bias in the healthcare community. One example is someone who's gone through extraordinary, wonderful efforts, has lost a clinically important amount of body weight, but still lives with obesity, who then goes to see a surgeon, no offense surgeons, who just says, just lose 20 or 30 more pounds and come back to see me, without recognizing that this person has already put in that effort. They've achieved their best weight. Only through austere, horrific means could they lose more weight. And what is that worth? It's not worth living if we're going to be quite miserable. So this understanding about the biology of obesity could really, I hope, have a powerful impact on cutting through stigma and bias. And we know that there's internal bias as well. So those living with weight have internalized that bias. You can't avoid it because we're like tofu or chicken. We absorb the values and the opinions and the belief systems of our culture. And so deep in there is often a feeling that I did this to myself. I could have done something different. I didn't take responsibility. There's something wrong with me. And I've had hundreds, if not thousands, of encounters now with people living with obesity, and I've heard these stories. And it's I think if you've had your experience, and I do think people connecting with each other about this, both through understanding the true nature of obesity, but also sharing your life experiences with each other, that you're not alone. And that is kind of about empowering a community so we can connect with one another and feel empowered to share your story. And also think about your story in a different way. Obesity is not your fault. Obesity is not your fault. That is such a hard thing to truly recognize. But I'd say it's a seed. It's a seed to plant and kind of fertilize and think about. Kind of hearing me out or hearing us out on the biology of obesity and the notion that we all have this implicit bias, this thoughts and belief systems that's underneath the surface, and then we become aware of it through our self-story and how we talk about things. We're very hard on ourselves. You're very hard on yourself. That's kind of how we're wired in our Western culture. So I'm one of the things, sometimes when I'm working with somebody, we don't really have a whole lot to do. Maybe we've maximized all efforts. Some people have gone through bariatric surgery, have had weight regain, are on medications, were intolerant to it, suffering with symptoms of obesity. And the one thing there that's left, and it's there at the beginning and it's there at the end, that we can work on is our sense of well-being, how we think about ourselves, understanding that there's this bias, and try to free ourselves up from all that mental real estate that's involved in thinking about our body weight on, and that it's our fault, and that if we just try harder, if we just achieve this weight number on the scale, then all things will be better, because they won't. And the time is now that we can always heal and work on healing from bias. And that, I think, is an important part of becoming empowered. And it's not going to happen overnight. And it's more of an aspiration, I think, more of an aspiration than a goal. But there's something in it. So thank you.